On June 28th, at the height of Gabbard's popularity among internet searches, in the immediate hours after the debate ended, and in the thick of the critical post-debate period, Google suspended Tulsi's Google Ads account without warning. For hours, I predict 100% every single word of this is going to get thrown out of court. This is a community-supported legal education channel. Find out how you can support our mission at the links in the description below. You may not necessarily agree with a politician's politics, but if this happened to you, you might feel a similar way about it. Let's put it that way. This is Tulsi Gabbard, the Tulsi Now political campaign, versus Google for First Amendment violations, constitutional violations, civil rights violations, unfair competition, good faith and fair dealing, the Trademark Act, and declaratory and injunctive relief, jury trial demanded. And she says, Plaintiff Tulsi Now, Principal Campaign Committee for Presidential Candidate Tulsi Gabbard, brings this lawsuit against defendant Google for serious and continuing violations of Tulsi's right to free speech. Since at least 2019, Google has used its control over online political speech to silence Tulsi Gabbard, a candidate millions of Americans want to hear from. With this lawsuit, Tulsi seeks to stop Google from further intermeddling in the 2020 United States presidential election. Really? Really? Google is the one intermeddling. Let's see how. We live in a time of unprecedented political upheaval and division in the United States. Uncertainty and mistrust in American institutions, most notably the United States government, are at record highs. Everything from basic norms of civility and compromise to the sanctity of American elections suddenly seems in flux. Americans wonder how we got here, and they want to know where we're going. Against this backdrop, it is not surprising that the race for the 2020 Democratic nomination for the President of the United States is the most hotly contested and the most politically open in recent memory. Americans want to hear fresh, diverse voices as they seek a new leader in this time of turmoil. Americans need to hear those voices. Tulsi Gabbard is one of those voices. Gabbard is a four-term United States Congresswoman, a major with over 16 years in the National Guard, and the first female combat veteran to run for president. In June 26th, 27th, 2019, during the Democratic Party presidential debates, tens of millions of Americans got to hear Tulsi Gabbard's voice for the first time, and people liked what they heard. Gabbard quickly became the most searched for Democratic presidential candidate on June 27th, 28, and in this crucial post-debate period, a time when presidential candidates receive outsized interest, engagement, and donations, Americans around the country wanted to hear more from Tulsi Gabbard. To speak to these Americans, Tulsi operated a Google Ads account. A Google Ads account allows political candidates to speak directly to people who want to hear from her. For example, millions of people were searching for information on Tulsi Gabbard from June 27th. Yeah, we've heard this. Through Google Ads, Tulsi could instantaneously and directly speak to these people by linking them to her webpage, etc. Or at least that is how things are supposed to work on Google's search platform, one of the largest forums for political speech in the entire world. In practice, however, Google plays favorites with no warning, no transparency, and no accountability until now. On June 28th, at the height of Gabbard's popularity among internet searches, in the immediate hours after the debate ended, and in the thick of the critical post-debate period, when television viewers, radio listeners, newspaper readers, and millions of other Americans are discussing and searching for presidential candidates, Google suspended Tulsi's Google Ads account without warning. For hours, as millions of Americans searched Google for information about Tulsi, and as Tulsi was trying through Google to speak to them, her Google Ads account was arbitrarily and forcefully taken offline. Throughout this period, the campaign worked frantically to gather more information about the suspension, to get through to someone at Google who could get the account back online, and to understand and remedy the restraint that had been placed on Tulsi's speech at precisely the moment when everyone wanted to hear from her. In response, the campaign got opacity and an inconsistent series of answers from Google. First, Google claimed that the account was suspended because it somehow violated Google's terms of service. It didn't. Later, Google changed its story. Then it changed its story again. Eventually, after several hours of bizarre and conflicting explanations while the suspension dragged on, Google suddenly reversed course completely and reinstated the account to this day. Google has not provided a straight answer, let alone a credible one, as to why Tulsi's political speech was silenced right precisely when millions of people wanted to hear from her. But in context, the explanation for Google's suspension of the account at exactly the wrong time is no great mystery. Google, or someone at Google, didn't want Americans to hear Tulsi Gabbard's speech, so it silenced her. This has happened time and time again across Google platforms. Google controls one of the largest and most important forums for political speech in the entire world, and it regularly silences voices it doesn't like and amplifies voices it does. And Google's election manipulation doesn't stop with its search platform. For example, Google's email platform, Gmail, sends communications from Tulsi into people's spam folders at a disproportionately high rate. In fact, Gmail appears to classify communications from Tulsi Gabbard as spam at a rate higher than other similar communications. For example, those from other Democratic presidential candidates. There is no technical explanation for this disparity. Google's arbitrary and capricious treatment of Gabbard's campaign should raise concerns for policymakers everywhere about the company's ability to use its dominance to impact political discourse in a way that interferes with the upcoming 2020 presidential election. In this case, Google has sought to silence Tulsi Gabbard, a presidential candidate who has vocally called for greater regulation and oversight of, you guessed it, Google. But this could happen to any candidate running in any election. With this lawsuit, Tulsi is fighting back. She will be heard. By acting to silence Gabbard at exactly the moment when her speech was most important and most ready to be heard, and in the single most politically charged context in the United States, a presidential election campaign, Google violated the campaign's federal and state right to free speech. Through its illegal actions targeting Tulsi Gabbard, Google has caused the campaign significant harm, both monetarily, including potentially millions of dollars in foregone donations, and non-monetary, the ability to provide Tulsi's important message with Americans looking to hear it. But even more pressing is the ongoing threat of targeted intermeddling in the 2020 United States presidential election by Google, an out-of-control tech giant looking to play favorites unless enjoined by this court. The campaign seeks declaratory and injunctive relief against Google for its illegal behavior and damages of no less than $50 million. Someone misunderstands freedom of speech, and it's strange that it's a political candidate, although knowing the president's misunderstanding of the laws, I shouldn't be surprised. No, Google is not a state actor. Google is not a wing of any state government or federal government. And so right off the bat, free speech laws don't apply to Google. Now, could Congress make a law or try to make a law or something? Sure. But remember, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So good luck. So if you're going to say that Google's speech can be limited by law, that Google has to display search engine results according to your algorithm, not its algorithm. I mean, this is a little ridiculous. Is it unfair when Google delists somebody? Is it unfair when YouTube demonetizes lawful masses? Yeah, it's unfair. Just because Google's a large platform and YouTube's a large platform, unless we're going down antitrust and monopoly territory, and even then, all that means is that they're too large and have to be broken up into smaller competitive organizations. Doesn't mean that you automatically are having your freedom of speech stifled. Although I see the argument. I see the claim. Yes, it's unfair. If Google was run by the government, yes, equal protection would apply and due process would apply, and you're supposed to get notice of when things are being taken down, and you're supposed to be treated no differently than other people. Everyone should have similar opportunities, and the outcomes fall where they may. That's equal opportunity, that's equal protection. Not equality of outcome, but equality of input or equality of opportunity.
Kotaku points out that it's literally not free speech because you have to pay for AdSense.
Yeah, and then let's forget that it's not Google search that we're talking about. It's Google AdWords. It's the ads run alongside Google search, which...
It's a service that you've paid for.
Yeah. So...
Now, could she say, I paid for a service and you messed up? Perhaps, but is that a free speech? Is that a constitutional issue?
Yeah, I don't know that this really goes very far, but let's at least see what she's argued. Now, there's another 30 pages of this, so here's where we're going to start skimming quickly. So they go through some of the facts. They go into her childhood, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really laying it on thick.
They're putting the PR into their lawsuit.
Right. They put the PR into their lawsuit. This is, she's criticized Google before, so Google has motive or some sort of connection or some sort of reason to disable her account maliciously. So they abruptly suspend her AdWords account. They won't explain why.
For a few hours. So
for a few hours.
She's communicating with tech support. Every person that she talks to is giving a little bit of a different story. Usually this happens when there's like a computer algorithm that detects if there's abnormal activity from your account.
The government's inexcusable inaction in ceding the internet to Google. Notably, Google did not ascend to its position as a central arbiter of political speech in a vacuum. Instead, the United States government's inexcusable action has ceded control of the internet, a public forum for all to express their opinions, to private companies like Google. I think someone misunderstands the nature of the internet. It's like when you go to the airport and you complain to you complain to the airport people about something that happened on the plane, or you complain to the plane people about something that happened in the airport or something, and you forget that these are all different people. Or maybe you complain to the airline about security or something. Like, these are all different entities. The TSA is also not Customs and Border Protection, is also not your airline, is not the airport. Might not be the same as the organization handling, say, catering services or baggage services or security services. Plus, there's the police that are there. So the internet's made up of a whole bunch of different players. And yeah, originally it was a government-sponsored defense network called ARPANET back in the day. Still connected between a lot of public universities, so arguably a public resource. And now it really has been sort of turned into a public resource where really all you have to do is pay for your use of it or your use of capacity, and you're on, and there's no other restrictions. And if we can get a JIT-Py out of the FCC someday, maybe we'll be able to keep it free from restrictions. But that doesn't change anything. Like, no one has connected how allowing the public to use the internet means that Google somehow has a duty to keep Tulsi Gabbard on its platform in a particular way. The United States government knows that the internet is integral to ensuring a free and democratic country. The government also knows that private companies such as Google have been censoring and limiting those freedoms. For years, the government has known that companies like Google are a threat to speech. For example, in 2012, the FTC staff found that Google has unlawfully maintained its monopoly over general search and search advertising in violation of Section 2, or otherwise engaged in unfair methods of competition in violation of Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. The FTC staff based its conclusion on 3 illegal acts by Google, one of which specifically related to Google's restrictions on management of advertising campaigns. FTC staff recommended filing a complaint against Google, yet the government hid the conclusions and declined. I don't see a cite. Do you see a citation there? I don't see a citation there. Other disturbing data points about the power wielded by Google and other major tech companies like Facebook have emerged in the recent years, of course, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that isn't as interesting as I originally thought it would. I was expecting some awesome argument about how the internet is an open public forum and therefore Google using I don't know, something like that, but that's not what I saw there. So, yeah. So Google is interfering with election advertising and electoral speech. I don't know that works. So she's suing for violations of the First Amendment and California Constitution about freedom of speech and Civil Rights Act, which none of this applies to her. So her political speech does not make her a member of a protected class. You can't discriminate against someone in employment based on a protected class, like race, age, gender, orientation, that sort of thing. Political beliefs are not a protected class. You are 100% allowed to discriminate against someone because you disagree with their political beliefs. You can even have a company, you can even have a for-profit company that says, we only hire Democrats. It's not usually done that way, but I've been on the other end of that. I was with a company that made it abundantly clear I wasn't welcome once they realized that I wasn't a Republican. And funny thing was, I actually was still kind of waffling about my political values back then, and so treating me like an outsider sort of decided it for me. It wasn't exactly helpful to have somebody who wanted me on their team telling me how much I wasn't allowed on their team. It was really weird. So, also alleged violations of business and professions code by committing acts of unfair competition. They also allege a breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. Google was bound by that covenant in their agreements, terms, policies not to engage in any acts, conducts, or omissions that would impair or diminish the campaign's rights or benefits. I'm going to guess that the terms of the agreement literally say we can suspend your account at any time for any reason at our discretion. And if you've agreed to that, you've agreed to that. Sorry. There was no good faith or fair dealing in not impairing the campaign's rights or whatever if you agreed that you get to use Google AdWords only under certain conditions. These are by the way, these conditions which are so favorable to Google are what has allowed the internet to thrive and prosper. So if you're going to start introducing all sorts of obstacles, you're going to notice things slowing down. And I don't mean necessarily the internet's going to slow down. I mean the progress is going to slow down. The use of the internet to, find new and innovative ways to make humanity fun and easy, you're going to notice that progress slowing down. So then they also allege trademark violations. I'm not sure how there would be a trademark violation. They say that Google advertises itself as a forum for open expression by diverse speakers, and that they unfairly and deceptively misrepresent the nature, characteristics, and qualities of Google services. This sounds like a tantrum at this point. This just sounds like a temper tantrum. This is going to get thrown out. I predict 100% every single word of this is going to get thrown out of court. Declaratory and injunctive relief. I don't see anything in here alleging what they're looking for, that the court has to issue a declaration of rights and an appropriate injunction. You just make the motion for the injunction. You don't have to ask for it. But sure, you can say it in here, but yeah, you just really need to make the motion for the injunction. So declaratory judgment that Google has violated free speech rights, not going to get that. For an injunction requiring Google to cease and desist restricting or censoring Tulsi's account, not going to get that. For damages, not going to get that. For penalties of the Business and Professions Code, no way. For punitive damages, attorney's fees, financial losses, etc., no way. Absolutely no way, and it's going to happen. I don't see it. I don't see it. Nope, that's a dog cam. There's my face cam. You're not going to see anybody winning anything there in that case. I just think that's a whole bunch of silly. Exactly. Mr. Lynch says it's a whole boat of silly. Yeah, that is a whole boat of silly from Tulsi Gabbard. And so enjoy your Tulsi Gabbard silly piñata there. of legal terms that just really don't form a claim. They put a bunch of legal words together, but none of that forms a legal claim or remedy that a court can recognize. So that's not gonna suffer motion to dismiss. And really, Google is basically just going to have to spend some lawyers at Google are going to spend a couple hours answering that, but that's about it. They've already answered these before. It's not like they don't have a lot of experience and a lot of there's not a lot of case precedent on here. They have a lot of experience and a lot of case precedent in these kinds of cases. They get dismissed all the time for these things. We've seen this for the past 2 years, including which was it? One of the PragerU lawsuit. Somebody sued YouTube and got thrown out on very, very similar grounds. So Google is even less. I think Google is less attackable than YouTube. YouTube made some pretty overt and egregious acts that made much more sense to me to attack. This lawsuit seems much more reaching and much more like someone is basically just throwing a legal tantrum.
I mean, I get the PR aspect of it, that, you know, if you throw a tantrum in court, then you can get people to cover it from a news angle. But what I don't really understand is that if I wanted to vote for someone for president, I would want her to understand the Constitution and who it applies to and at what times.
And did I see that she was a Democratic candidate for president?
Yes.
So, I mean, pardon me getting political for a moment here, but we regularly see the Trump administration more or less completely disregarding any rule of law or precedent, case history, which would be precedent, I guess, legislative intent, plain meaning of words. Trump basically just does whatever the heck he wants, and somebody in his administration has to figure out how to justify it after he does it. So everything's pretentious in the legal sense in Trump's administration. So does Tulsi really think that she can pull that crap with the Democrats and they're going to just eat it up in the reverse direction? I don't think so. I don't think it works that way. So thank you for joining us. That is our show. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. Thank you to our patreon.com/ljfrench and sponsors.org/law supporters. Your financial support makes this entire thing possible. We do a lot of work for you here, but I want to let you go. So thank you very much to our $500 supporter for the month of July, Joshua Davis from TandaPay. We'll be making a video about his social insurance program that uses blockchain technology. Thank you to our $50 plus supporters, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Kyle Mudrak, Eevi, Michael Pearce, Richard Fournier, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Daniel Perez, and Snorre Wisotzky. And thank you to the $5 plus supporters who are on the LED panel behind me and in the description of the videos below. I'll leave some room here for dog video. Love you all. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. Have a great week. Thank you to Brandon and Technical in the virtual studio today, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.